Erev Tov and good evening, everyone. We are in the Zera Shimshon. This week is Parsha Tazria Mitzorah. We're going to look at Parsha Tazria Os Yud, section 10 in the Zera Shimshon. In the sefer, this is on Daf Samech. It's the second chelek of the Zera, the two volume commentary of the Zera Shimshon on Chumash. So let's jump right in. Yuma Perek Zion, the seventh parak of Maseches Yuma. Amar Rava said, call Talmid Chacham she'ein tocho kivoro, any Torah scholar whose inside, meaning his sincerity and his commitment, doesn't match his outside appearance, eino Talmid Chacham, he is not a true Torah scholar. Abaya v'itema Rabba Bar Ula, Abaya, and some say it was Rabba Bar Ula, commented on this. Omar said, Af nikra to'eva, such a person, person who dresses and looks like a Torah scholar, but on the inside does not have the appropriate midos, nikra to'eva is called abominable. Shenemar be'Iyov, as the pasuk says in Iyov, af ki nisav v'ne'elach. Even he is being an abomination, he is being an abominable and loathsome. That pasuk, the reason it connects to, the reason the Gemara brings it down is because that pasuk, as it continues, talks about someone drinking a lot of water. And so Chazal interpret that to mean a person who drinks a lot of water of Torah. They take in a tremendous amount of Torah knowledge. And so they appear to be a Talmid Chacham. They appear to be a true Torah scholar. They have so much Torah knowledge, but they act in such a way that goes against, that doesn't reflect their Torah knowledge. Then they are they're abominable and loathsome. And so that pasuk is being applied to a Talmid Chacham she'ein tocho kivoro, whose inside is not as his outside is. Let's continue. The Zera Shimshon comments, Yesh lahavin hatam she'eino Talmid Chacham. We need to understand what's the reason that this person can't be considered a Talmid Chacham. After all, if a person amasses a tremendous amount of Torah knowledge, shouldn't they be considered a Torah scholar? So why is this person not considered a Talmid Chacham? Ve'amai himtin, and also another thing that Zera Shimshon wants to understand is why did Rabba Bar Ula wait, Lomar, to say shenikra to'eva, that this person is considered abominable, achar divrei Rava, after Rava made his statement, v'lo amram bifnei atzmam, and he did not say his own words, his own opinion independently. Shemisha ain tocho kivoro, that someone whose insides is not like his outsides, nikra toeva, is called abominable. So the Zera Shimshon notices and remarks upon the fact that Abaya, and again, we don't know if it's Abaya or Rabba Bar Ula, there's a difference of opinion as to who made this statement, but either one of them didn't make their statement independently. They waited until Rava said such a person whose insides don't match his outside is not a true Talmid Chacham. And then they added and said, you know what, that's true. And also he's considered abominable. So Zera Shimshon is asking, why did they wait? Why didn't they just make an independent statement on their own? Why did they wait for Rava to make his statement before adding their additional comment? Kanireh, it appears, Sheba lahosif al divrei Rava, that they're only coming to add to what Rava said, not to make an independent statement. But definitely what we have to say is the im lo haya omer Rava. If Rava had not made his claim, she'eino Talmid Chacham, that such a person is not a true Torah scholar, lo haya yochol lomar shenikra toeva, that Abaya or Rabba Bar Ula would not have been able to say that such a person is considered abominable. Umnam, however, la'achar sheshama she'eino Talmid Chacham, after they heard that this person is not, after they heard Rava said this person isn't considered a Talmid Chacham, Amar, then they added their comment, Al Korchach Lomar, then we have to say, Shenikra To'eva, that this person is considered abominable. So the Zera Shimshon here, you wouldn't even really call them questions. He usually asks questions, but here he just says, we need to understand two things. A, we need to probe and better and understand why Rava said such a person is not considered a true Torah scholar. And number two, we need to understand why Abaya or Rabba Bar Ula made their additional comment as an additional comment, as opposed to just saying an independent comment separate from Rava's statement. Those are the two things that the Zera Shimshon wants to understand. And so now he begins to delve into other makoros, other sources to shed light on our Gemara that he started with and Maseches Yuma. Now he says, bottom paragraph, the Amrina b'Perach de Shabbos, we say in the 8th parak of Maseches Shabbos, Sudara, the Sudar or Sudara, which was a kind of cloak and / headgear. We'll talk about that in a moment and also talk about what this Gemara in Shabbos is discussing with, because it's very interesting. But in any case, the Gemara says, Sudara, the scarf and headdress thing that Torah scholars used to wear back in the day, in Talmudic times, stands for Sod Hashem Lireav. The secret of Hashem is given to those who fear him. So the actual word Sudara, which in Aramaic means a scarf / type of headdress, actually has a meaning besides for being the name of that garment, and it's Sod Hashem Lireav. It hints to the pasuk of Sod Hashem Lireav, the secret of Hashem is to those who fear him. That pasuk, by the way, Sod Hashem Lireav, those 3 words come from Tehillim. That's a pasuk, comes from a pasuk in Tehillim. Upirish Maharsha, the Maharsha on that Gemara Masechta Shabbos explains, Big Day Adam Mirumazim Al Midosav Shel Adam. The clothing of a person gives hints to the midos, the quality and the character traits of that person. Moshe Kosev, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, and here, by the way, there's a little typo that you can correct if you would like. It says Koheles Perek Ches pasuk Tes. It's actually Koheles Perek Tes pasuk Ches, a minor little correction if you'd like to make it. In any case, the pasuk says Bechol Eis Yiyu Vigadecho Levonim. The pasuk says at all times your clothing should be white. And the Zera Shimshon is quoting that because the way Chazal understand that pasuk is that it's telling a person a lesson both about physical dress and also about their quality and their midos. At all times, you should wear white clothing is an appropriate way to dress. And also, in addition, a person should have midos that are white and pure, and they should have both of those things: an outward pure appearance and an inward pure character. Umalos hamidos hi hayira. One of the highest level of the traits of the possible quality traits that a person can develop is the quality of yiras Hashem, fear and awe of Hashem. The Alkain, and therefore Shem Hasudar, the name of this scarf headdress type garment, Hamora Alzeh, which alludes to this idea of Sod Hashem Lireav, that Hashem gives secret knowledge and wisdom to those who fear him, who miyuchad liyirei Hashem, this garment should be reserved for those who actually truly fear Hashem. So let's pause here before the Zera Shimshon goes on with another Gemara, and just to talk a little bit about what's happening here in the first Gemara in Masechah Shabbos that he quotes. So the Gemara there does a very interesting thing. It brings in a whole list of items. It's almost a miscellaneous thing, all different types of things. And it says what the words mean, what the words actually stand for. So it takes Aramaic words and it says, you might think this word has a certain regular meaning, the way when people use it. But in addition to that, it has another meaning or an additional meaning or an attached meaning that's significant as well. So one example is the one the Zera Shimshon quoted here, which is the sudar. Now, a sudar is sometimes referred to as a kind of scarf or thing that people would wear over their shoulders or around their neck. And other times the Gemara seems to refer to it as a type of wrap that people would wear as a turban on their head. And still in other times, it seems to be a garment that could do both, fulfill both roles. It could be wrapped around the head and then come down and be draped over the shoulders. And that was called a sudar, this again, a scarf / headdress. This was the Gemara is suggesting that garment should be reserved for true Talmidei Chacham and true pious individuals because of the word itself. Sudar hints to Sod Hashem Lireav. It refers to people who have true yiras Hashem, true fear of Hashem. Now the Zera Shimshon continues. Ubeperek elu kisharim, and another place in Gemara Masechta Shabbos, Amrina, and Chazal say, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Kol Talmid Chacham shenimsa revav al begodav, any Torah scholar who has a fat stain, a kind of grease stain on his clothing, chayav misa, is condemned, is obligated to get the death penalty. Now, that doesn't mean in a legal, juridical way that actually they come and execute such a person, but it means such a person has done a very serious sin to the degree that he could even be considered chayav misa, a Talmid Chacham, again, who's wearing clothes with grease stains or food stains on his garments. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, continuing to the top of the second column, Kol misanai ahavu maves. All of those who hate me. This is a pasuk from Mishlei. All of those who hate me, ahavu maves. They love death. So the interpretation, the drasha given to this pasuk is al tikre misanai. Don't read the word as those who hate me, ella masni'ai, but rather read it as masni'ai, which means those who cause others to hate me. So in the pasuk, if we go back and read the pasuk in this way that Chazal is interpreting it, it would be read as follows: Kol masni'ai, all of those who act in such a way that it disgraces Hashem's name and it causes other people who see these individuals to hate Hashem, ahavu maves, they love death. Their actions must mean they love death. And that's where the Gemara came up with the idea that such a person, a Talmid Chacham who wears stained garments, and this brings disgrace upon Hashem, and this brings derision and mockery upon the person who supposedly is a Talmid Chacham and therefore represents Hashem and Hashem's will. This is considered a chilul Hashem and makes the person chayav misa. So the Zera Shimshon is showing us that the clothing that a person wears, and specifically a Talmid Chacham, and the way that represents Hashem must be taken very, very seriously. Now he continues. Uba Perek Chelek, and the 10th parak of Masechah Sanhedrin, Omar Rav Misharsha. Rav Misharsha said, Doeg va'achitofel. These are two figures from Shmuel Beis, and we'll come back and talk about who they were in a moment. These two people, lo havu savre shemasisa. They did not understand Talmudic discussions. Now, these two people are depicted in Shmuel Beis and Navi as doing terrible things. And we'll get back to that in a moment. But they're also in Chazal people who are described as being tremendous Talmidei Chachamim, great Torah scholars with voluminous Torah knowledge, tremendous Torah knowledge. And Rav Misharsha came along and he said, these two guys, Doeg and Achitofel, didn't understand learned discussions, didn't understand Talmudic discussions. So the Gemara continues, Maskiflo Marzutra. Marzutra attacked this statement. And he said, Man de kosiv behu, aye sofer va'aye shokel. People who it's written about them, or who we can refer this pasuk in Yeshayahu, which says, Aye Sofer, where is the one who can count? The Aye Shokel, and where is the one who can weigh? The Atam Mard Lo Havisavre Shemasiso, and you say they didn't understand learned and Talmudic discussions. Now, there's a lot to explain here. Let's start with the pasuk. The pasuk says, where is the person who can count and where is the person who can weigh things appropriately? And Chazal interpret that pasuk to mean, where is the person who can correctly and accurately count the arguments for and pro and con of a certain kind of learned subject, a certain Talmudic subject? And where is the person who can not only count them, meaning keep them in mind and list them, but also shokel, also weigh them and evaluate them? Where is such a person? Meaning such a person is hard to find. And the Gemara applies, in a different place, the Gemara applies this pasuk to Doeg and Achitofel, saying they are examples of people who both knew, they could count and list all hundreds of opinions about very arcane and difficult to understand subjects. And in addition to being able to do that, they could weigh them and evaluate them. So Marzutra is saying, these guys that you quoted, Doeg and Achitophel, who you're saying didn't understand Talmudic discussions, they're in a different place. They're referred to as giants of Torah knowledge. So what are you talking about? So the Gemara continues, Ela dilo salko luhu shemasisa aliba dechilchasa. Rav Misharsha answers, what I really meant was not that they couldn't understand learned discussions, but they were unable to conclude their learning, to bring their learning to a close with the proper halachic conclusions. They could quote hundreds of viewpoints. They could analyze and weigh and evaluate hundreds of viewpoints. But in the end, they did not merit the ability to say, based on all of these things, here is the final halacha that people should follow, and have other rabbis accept their rulings. They weren't able to do that. And that is what Rav Misharsha was saying about them. Not that they couldn't understand Talmudic and learning discussions, but they were not able to bring them to a closure and to understand the halacha, to conclude with the proper halacha. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says that we started with, Sod Hashem Lireav, the pasuk from Tehillim, the secrets of Hashem, and here the Gemara uses it to mean the secrets of understanding the proper halacha and concluding a learned subject with the proper halacha for people to follow. That only is given lireav, to those who fear Hashem. And since Doeg and Achitophel did not have yiras Hashem, they didn't have a fear of Hashem, they were not able to reach this level of shemasis aliba dehilchasa, concluding learned discussions according to the halacha. Upirish Rashi, and Rashi explains, Lo have savre shemasis. What did that mean? Lo ha yodim halacha. They did not know the actual halacha lefarsha kitikuna, to be able to explain it correctly, bitama, with the appropriate reasons, with the appropriate reasoning behind it. So they could quote hundreds of arguments, and they could list all of the pros and cons of any particular viewpoint, but they didn't understand the reasoning behind it well enough to be able to show the other rabbis and explain their viewpoint, so the other rabbanim would say, oh, this is the halacha, this is what we should follow. That they were not able to do. Before we continue in this paragraph about Doeg and Achitophel, let's just talk about who they were for a moment. Doeg was a person who, Doeg HaEdomi, was again a character and a person mentioned in Shmuel Beis as being very close to Shaul HaMelech, a servant of Shaul HaMelech, a high-level servant of Shaul HaMelech. And he was present when David, who was on the run from Shaul, visited the city of Nov, Ir Kohanim, a city which was inhabited by Kohanim. And the Kohen Gadol at that time helped David and assisted him, because David said, I'm here on a mission from Shaul, which was disingenuous. It wasn't true. It wasn't accurate. But that's what David told him. And so he said, oh, let me give you food and water, and let me take care, give you provisions. And he also gave him the sword of Goliath, the sword of Goliath that had been stored in that city. And so he armed him, and he fed him, and he took care of him. And later on, Shaul viewed this as a rebellious act. And he said, I want these people killed. I want the Kohanim killed. I want their families and wives. I want everyone to be wiped out. None of Shaul's soldiers or followers would do this, such a terrible, heinous act. And Doeg said, I'll do it. Doeg not only turned these people in and told Shaul what they had done, which he knew would result in terrible acts of vengeance against them. So he told Shaul what happened, how they helped David. And then he said, I'll be the one to kill them. So he's viewed as a horrific person. Achitophel was an advisor originally of David's, and a person who his knowledge and his wisdom was viewed in that with the highest esteem, and his counsel was called as if receiving a message from Hashem, from the Urim V'Tumim. When Achitophel gave advice to David, everyone said that advice it's as if it's coming right from Hashem, a message from Hashem. And Achitophel, when Avshalom, David's son, revolted against him, Achitophel left David, deserted him, and joined the rebellious forces of Avshalom. And so he too is viewed as a traitor and a very evil person. And so again, even though these were great Torah sages, there was something deeply flawed in their character, as the Zera Shimshon continues. The Doeg v'Achitophel tino hayasod b'libam. And Doeg and Achitophel were people who had a kind of obstruction in their hearts. V'lo hayasa torasam ella misafa minasafa v'lachutz. And their Torah knowledge was only from their lips out, meaning it wasn't internalized. Their Torah knowledge did not go inside of them. It did not change their characters. It wasn't absorbed into their actual midos, into the actual ways that they behaved. But rather, it was what they taught. They could talk a good game. They could talk the talk, but they actually didn't walk the walk, so to speak. Because their insides were not at all like their outsides. On the outside, they appeared like great Torah scholars and righteous individuals, but on the inside, they were corrupted and they were blocked and they didn't internalize their Torah knowledge. And even though they were such great sages, since they could never bring their knowledge to actually being able to explain the halacha and get others to accept their halachic opinions, mikru de lo savre shemasasa. The Gemara refers to them as people who did not understand Talmudic discussions. Vehatam, and what's the reason that with all their knowledge they couldn't come to the proper conclusions? Hu kisod Hashem lireav. It's all because of this pasuk that the secrets of Hashem are reserved for those who have true yiras Hashem. If a person wants to actually be able to figure out the proper halacha to follow, they don't just need Torah knowledge. Doeg and Achitofel had tremendous Torah knowledge. They need Torah knowledge, and they also need yiras Hashem. They need the appropriate midos, and one of those midos is yiras Hashem, and then they will be given the zuchus, the merit, to figure out the proper halacha. Dahainu hayira shelo hayu lahem. This refers to the yiras Hashem which they lacked. Continuing, V'lachein Amar Rava, and therefore Rava said, Kol Talmid Chacham shein tocho kivaro, any Torah scholar whose inside does not match his outside, she'ein lo hayira, who doesn't have yiras Hashem, eino Talmid Chacham, he can't be considered a true Torah scholar. Shelo yiglu lo min hashamayim soda halacha, because from Shamayim it will never be revealed to him the secrets of understanding the actual halacha. The Kivan Sheshama Abaya, and since Abaya heard Rava say, Shemi she'ein tocho kavaro einu bechlal sod Hashem lireav, Abaya said, now that Rava has made this powerful statement that this person is not considered a true Talmid Chacham because he doesn't have yiras Hashem on the inside, he only has the external Torah knowledge, Im kein nikra toeva. Then Abaya said, based on that, and only based on that point that Rava just said, that Rava just stated, then I can say this person is called a toeva, an abominable individual. Mishum de Talmid Chacham tzorech sheyeh lo malbush naki mibachutz, because a Talmid Chacham not only needs clean and appropriate clothing from the outside, kemoshe yesh lo yira bifnim, that should be a reflection of the yiras Hashem and the appropriate midos and character traits that the Talmid Chacham has on the inside. The Moshe Amru, as the Gemara said, Zera Shimshon quoted previously, Sudara, this scarf and headdress that was reserved for the Talmidei Chachomim stands for Sod Hashem Lireav. It actually hints to these words in the Pasuk in Tehillim about the secrets of Hashem are given only to his those who fear him. Umishiyeshlo Revav Nikra Masniai, someone who has what seems like a little thing, a little stain on their clothing in Talmid Chacham, he is called someone who causes people to hate Hashem. And so too this applies, how much more so you might say, but so too this applies to someone who has stains on the inside, corruption on the inside. She'ein lo yira, who doesn't have yiras Hashem, like Doeg and Achitofel. Habe bichlal masni'ai, he's included in this terrible idea of causing people to hate Hashem. V'hainu to'eva, and this is truly being abominable. Shehu nisav mikol adam, because this person is viewed with loathing and abomination by all other people. When someone sees what a tremendous hypocrite such a person is, that they wear the appropriate clothing, they talk as if they have great Torah knowledge, but then their actions show that it means nothing to them, and they violate with their actions their apparent Torah knowledge, and they do it publicly, this means that they become hated by everyone. Ubederech ze omru. Now the Zera Shimshon continues. Along this vein that we're discussing, he quotes a medrash, which is on the first parak in Sefer Devarim. V'yeduim l'shivteichem. Moshe Rabbeinu in the first parak in Devarim, as we know, is recounting. He's going back in history and he's saying to the Jewish people, let's go back and talk about the events that happened since Yetzias Mitzrayim, since we left Egypt and our travels in the Midbar. And at one point he says to them, to Bnei Yisrael, he says, you will remember that it was impossible for me alone to handle all of your discussions and your debates and your arguments and your court cases and your claims from one to another. I couldn't deal with it all. And so I appointed judges and I set up a whole judicial system. Of course, we know that this was connected to the advice that Yisro, Moshe's father-in-law, gave him. But in any case, Moshe says, I looked for people who were Yeduim L'Shivteichem, who were well known in your tribes. Moshe says, I appointed people who you knew from your communities and your tribes. I didn't just choose people that I understood that they had the knowledge and the character to be good judges, to be shoftim and leaders. I appointed people that you knew, he says to them. Shehem Yeduim Lachem, they were well known to you. Now the Medrash comments on that. She'im bo lefonai me'utaf b'taliso. If a man comes in front of me and he's wrapped in his talis, in other words, he's such a pious individual that he walks around wrapped in his talis, and I can't even exactly make out who he is. Eini yodea mihu. I myself am personally not going to even know who he is. Ume'ez shevet, and from what tribe he's from. So Moshe said, I asked you, the people in each tribe, to tell me who were the ones that you thought were appropriate. Why? Because people who came to me, candidates who came to me, they came as if they were so pious and righteous, and they were, not to say that they weren't, but that they were wrapped in their talis. I couldn't even see their faces or really clearly understand what they were saying. So I couldn't ascertain exactly enough. I couldn't get enough information to decide if these were the appropriate people to be judges. So I listened to you. And the Medrash says that's what it means when it says Yeduim L'Shivteichem. Moshe says, I chose people who were known in each of their own tribes. V'kosher, and it's difficult. Maratzalomar me'utef betaliso. What did Moshe mean when he said candidates would come wrapped in their talises? V'chitisok adatin shekol mishu me'utef betalis. Would it ever occur to him, to us, to anyone, that a person wrapped in a talis, Adam Gadol, automatically must mean he's a great person? In other words, these people came wrapped in a talis. Does that mean they thought that Moshe would automatically pick them because they were wrapped in a talis? If you're wrapped in a talis, it automatically means you're a righteous and a knowledgeable and a God-fearing person. The Zera Shimshon says, is that really true? Ulefi divarenu, and according to the things that we've established, the Zera Shimshon says, Asi Shapir, it makes sense. We can understand this medrash based on what we've discussed before about a person's clothing and how they comport themselves and dress themselves and how they appear, how that is supposed to reflect their internal traits. Desudra eino ela l'talmidei chachamim, because wrapping oneself in this scarf and headdress and covering oneself in that way is reserved for Talmidei Chachamim, lezecher sheyesh lam yiras Hashem, to show that they have, to recall to everyone and remind everyone that they have yiras Hashem. The Omar Moshe, and that's why the people came dressed in that way, wrapped in their talisim. The Omar Moshe, and Moshe said, Imani roa anoshim ke'elu. If I see people wrapped in that way, yes, that makes a good impression, but eini yochol lahavchin, I can't distinguish even who they are and what tribe they belong to, and I can't get a feel for whether they're really, I can't ascertain whether they're really the appropriate judges. V'af Yisro Omar, and even Yisro himself, who gave the advice about setting up a judicial system, he said, he said to Moshe, Yisro said to Moshe, I will give you advice, V'hi Elokim imach, and Hashem should be with you. Klomar, this means to say, I'm going to advise you, Sha'ata techezeh, that you should look and find appropriate people. However, tzarech liyos Elokim imach be'etza. I'm telling you up front, you're going to need Hashem's assistance to know whether these are the appropriate people. So the Zera Shimshon says, if we move from Devarim, where Moshe made his statement, And we go back to Shmos when Yisro gave Moshe the advice. Yisro himself from the very beginning said, I'm advising you to pick people, appropriate people, but you're not going to be able to do it on your own because you won't have the necessary knowledge of each of the individuals who come before you. There was probably a huge, almost unending line, unceasing line of candidates coming to Moshe. How could Moshe know what he needed about each one? So Yisro said, you're going to need Hashem's help to pick the appropriate judges. Ki ha'odom yira le'einayim. This is a pasuk from Shmuel Aleph, as you see there in the parentheses, because a man sees le'einayim based on his eyes, ve'Hashem yira le'levav, and Hashem sees to the heart of the individual. That pasuk, just as an aside, is a reference to when Shmuel Hanavi went. Hashem said, I'm sending you to the family of Yishai, and I want you to pick from one of his sons. One of his sons is going to be the future Melech, the future king of Bnei Yisrael, and I want you to pick him and anoint him to ultimately replace Shaul. And when Shmuel Hanavi went and met with Yishai's family, the oldest son came out, and he was tall and fine-looking and very impressive in his appearance. And Shmuel Hanavi said, this must be the one. Hashem, this must be the one you want me to pick. And Hashem said, no. Don't look just with your eyes. That's what you're doing, and you're seeing the outside physical appearance. Listen to what I'm going to tell you, because I'm looking into the hearts of the sons of Yishai, and I will let you know which one is the appropriate one. And of course, when David HaMelech came out, Hashem said, this is the one, Shmuel, for you to anoint to be the future leader of the Jewish people. So this was a wonderful, wonderful piece, fascinating piece in the Zera Shimshon, where as we conclude it now, we can just go back and recap that the Zera Shimshon wanted to bring out to us from the original quote from Chazal and the Gemara in Yuma, several Gemaras in Masechta Shabbos, a Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin, all of this to bring home the point that a true Torah scholar and a true God-fearing individual must be tocho kivaro. He must not just have the appearance on the outside, the external appearance of a righteous and a pious and a knowledgeable individual, but he must have tremendous yiras Hashem, and he must have developed all of his other midos on the inside as well, so that there's a match and a symmetry and a coherence between the inside traits, character traits of the person, and the outside appearance. That is not easy, and that's why finding true Talmidei Chachamim in the world is rare, but thank God, Baruch Hashem, we're blessed with so many Tzadikim and Talmidei Chachamim and Poskim and Rabbanim, etc. But they have to have these characteristics that the Zera Shimshon has described for us. Yasher koach for everyone for joining the learning tonight, and Emir Tashem, God willing, we look forward to learning again in the Zera Shimshon next week.